Getting Sydney in and out of her wheelchair wasn't easy for two doctors and nurses together. I wasn't at all encouraged that it was going to be easy when it was just me and her. They had tied a cloth around the cast at the break site so that Sydney could pull on it to lift her leg up, as her leg was still broken in half, essentially leaving her with no ability to lift it on her own. This was very evident when we got out to the car, as two nurses accompanied us outside to help her get in our car. I had set up pillows in the back seat, but we learned that when you have a broken leg and a long leg cast, nothing is going to be easy, no matter how much you think you're set up for it. They backed up her wheelchair to the back seat of the car, which I had opened the door to. Sydney, as you can see from the pictures I provided, is not a small woman. The nurses were pretty much helpless at this point, as Sydney was so immobile that she couldn't lift herself out of the wheelchair and into the back seat. They said to me that I was probably going to have to pick her up and put her in the back seat. I crouched down to Sydney and put one arm around her back, and took my other arm and wrapped it around both of her legs, her bare leg and her casted leg, and asked Sydney if she was ready. I could see a couple tears on her cheek, and she said, "Ready as I'm ever going to be?" "Are you ready?" she asked me. I said, "Of course, honey." I guess I wasn't ready the first time, as I'd never picked Sydney up before. I went to lift her out of the wheelchair, and I almost dropped her the first time. She was so heavy. The second time, I lifted her up and got her butt to the edge of the back seat. Because she couldn't lift her leg on her own and hadn't been holding the piece of cloth to keep her leg elevated, when I put her in the back seat, her casted leg thumped down and hit the edge of the seat. Sydney screamed out in pain. "Oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry," I said. She took a deep breath and said, "It's okay, babe. I should have been hanging onto the cloth." The nurses told me to wrap both arms around the huge cast and slowly guide it, and her, all the way into the seat. I wrapped my arms around the scratchy fiberglass cast and started pushing slowly. Sydney did a little butt bounce, where she lifted her ass up so that I could push her further back into the seat. I got turned on a bit when she did this, as I loved seeing Sydney's huge ass bounce. The nurses wished us the best of luck and went back inside. Sydney asked me if they were gone, and I said yes. She said, "Thank God," and asked me to take the sock off the foot part of her cast. I gladly did, as Sydney had the most beautiful feet. When we got home, I pulled the car into our backyard. I got out of the driver's seat and opened the back door. Sydney immediately said, "I need you inside of me." I told her I needed to be inside of her. "How are we going to do this?" she asked. I grabbed both of her legs and tugged them towards me, and all of a sudden our private parts were touching. She told me to take my shorts off. I very quickly did. She just had her dress on and no underwear on. She said, "Put my cast on top of your shoulder." I did that and pulled her closer. She was holding herself up by the palms of her hands on the edge of the seat. I was rock hard because we hadn't had sex in over a week. I pulled her closer one more time. Even though her leg was up in the air over my shoulder, her cast went so high up that my dick was rubbing up against the top cuff of the cast. When I went to put it inside of her, I got it about halfway in and she wailed in pleasure. It was a great feeling, although the padded cuff of her cast was padded so much that it was pushing against my penis. We had sex for about 15 minutes, and by the end I had a huge burn mark on both my dick and the top of my shoulder where the cast had rubbed up against it on every thrust.